Moonbound Hearts. Prologue. The silver blade pressed against my throat, and I could smell the wolfsbane coating its edge. My mate, the man I'd loved for 3 years, held it there with steady hands. Cale Thornwyck's golden eyes were empty, cold as the winter moon above us. "You were always meant to die tonight, Elowen," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. Behind him, she stood in the shadows, Isolde Ravencrest, the elegant she-wolf from the northern pack, her lips curved in a satisfied smile. My heart shattered before my body could. This was my wedding night. The night I was supposed to become Luna. Instead, I was prey. The forest floor was cold beneath my knees, and I could feel my wolf whimpering inside me, begging me to fight, to run, to survive. But how do you run from the person who taught you to trust? How do you fight the hands that once held you gently? The blade bit deeper, drawing a thin line of blood, and I closed my eyes. Not in surrender. In rage. Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. The Betrayal. The wolfsbane burned through my veins like liquid fire, but I forced my eyes open. I needed to see his face one more time. Cale's jaw was clenched tight, a muscle twitching near his temple, the only sign that this wasn't easy for him. "Why?" The words scraped out of my throat, raw and broken. He didn't answer. Instead, Isolde stepped forward, her silver dress catching moonlight like armor. "Because you're weak, little forest wolf," she said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as deadly. "Did you really think an alpha like Cale would bind himself to someone with tainted blood? Your mother was human. You're half-breed trash." The words hit harder than any physical blow. I'd spent my entire life trying to prove I belonged in the Thornwyck pack, training harder than anyone, healing wounded wolves with the forest magic my human mother taught me before she died. And still, it wasn't enough. Cale's hand trembled slightly on the blade. "The curse demands pure blood," he said, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw pain flash across his face. "My father's dying. The only way to break the bloodline curse is to sacrifice a mate under the full moon. It has to be you." Understanding crashed through me like a frozen wave. This had been planned from the start. Every gentle touch, every whispered promise, every night he held me and swore we'd rule the pack together. All of it was a lie. He'd chosen me specifically because I was expendable, because my mixed blood made me the perfect sacrifice. "You son of a..." I didn't get to finish. Cale's free hand shot out and grabbed my hair, yanking my head back to expose my throat fully. The silver blade gleamed, poised to end everything. But then the wind shifted. A scent hit me, pine and snow and something wild, something ancient. Cale froze. Isolde's smug expression cracked. "No," she breathed, her face going pale. "He can't be here." The border treaty. A massive gray wolf exploded from the treeline, moving faster than my eyes could track. It slammed into Cale with the force of a landslide, sending him flying 20 feet into an oak tree. The silver blade spun through the air and embedded itself in the ground near my hand. I grabbed it without thinking, my fingers closing around the leather-wrapped hilt even as the wolfsbane residue stung my palm. Isolde shifted instantly, her elegant form melting into a sleek white wolf, and lunged for my throat. I rolled, bringing the blade up, and felt it connect with flesh. She yelped and retreated, blood streaming from a gash across her shoulder. The gray wolf stood between us now, and I realized he was enormous, easily twice the size of any wolf I'd ever seen. His eyes were ice blue, glowing in the darkness, and when he looked at me, something inside my chest pulled tight. My wolf, who'd been cowering in terror moments ago, suddenly surged forward, pressing against my skin, desperate to shift and run to him. What was happening? The wolf's lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing teeth like daggers, and he advanced on Isolde. She took one look at him and ran, disappearing into the forest with her tail tucked. Cale was struggling to his feet, blood running down his face from where his head had hit the tree. Riven Ashmore. He spat the name like a curse. This is Thornwyck territory. You have no right. The gray wolf shifted, and suddenly a man stood where the beast had been. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his shoulders and scars crisscrossing his chest. He was completely naked, unbothered by it, and when he smiled at Kale, it was all teeth and no warmth. "I have every right," Riven said, his voice a low rumble that I felt in my bones. "She's my mate." Chapter 2. 3 years earlier. I was 16 when I first saw Kale Thornwyck, and I fell in love like a fool falling off a cliff, fast, hard, and with no idea how much the landing would hurt. He was 19, already being groomed to take over the pack, with his father's golden eyes and his mother's sharp cheekbones. Every she-wolf in the territory wanted him. But he chose me. I was sitting by the river that marked the border between Thornwyck land and the unclaimed forest where I lived with my dying mother. She'd been human once, before my father, a Thornwyck warrior, marked her and triggered a dormant wolf gene she never knew she carried. The pack had exiled them both for it. Impure union, they'd called it. My father died fighting rogues when I was 5, and my mother raised me alone, teaching me to use the earth magic that came from her human bloodline, showing me how to survive between two worlds. That day, I was gathering willow bark for her pain when Kale emerged from the trees on the Thornwyck side. He was bleeding from a deep gash across his ribs, his shirt torn and soaked red. "Help," he gasped, and collapsed at the water's edge. I should have left him. Should have remembered that his pack had turned their backs on my family. But I couldn't watch anyone die. I dragged him to my side of the river, pressed my hands to his wound, and channeled the forest's energy into him. My mother had taught me this, how to weave life force from growing things, how to knit flesh and bone with nothing but will and magic. It drained me completely. By the time his wound closed to a pale pink scar, I was shaking with exhaustion, barely able to sit upright. Kale's eyes fluttered open, and he stared at me like I was something miraculous. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Elowen," I said. "Elowen Thorn." Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something I couldn't read. "You're Garrett Thorn's daughter, the exile's child." His hand caught mine before I could pull away. "That was beautiful. What you just did. I've never seen healing magic like that. You saved my life." He sat up slowly, testing his newly healed ribs, then looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I'm going to be alpha someday. And when I am, I'm going to bring you into the pack. I'm going to give you the place your father should have had." It was the most beautiful lie anyone ever told me. Over the next 3 years, he courted me in secret. He'd slip away from pack duties and meet me at the river, bringing gifts, a silver bracelet, wildflowers, a leather-bound journal. He'd hold me and whisper promises about our future. "When I'm alpha, everything changes," he'd say, his forehead pressed to mine. "We'll make new laws. Pure blood won't matter anymore. We'll judge wolves by their strength and loyalty, not their lineage." I believed him because I wanted to, because the alternative, that I'd spend my entire life as an outcast, was too painful to accept. My mother died when I was 18, her human body finally giving out under the strain of carrying wolf essence. With her last breath, she gripped my hand and whispered, "Be careful who you trust, little one. Love makes us blind." I thought she was just delirious with fever. Now, kneeling in the forest with a silver blade in my hand and my mate's betrayal fresh as an open wound, I finally understood. She'd known. Somehow, she'd known that loving Kale Thornwyck would destroy me. And she'd been powerless to stop it, just as she'd been powerless to stop her own exile, her own slow death. The day after her funeral, Kale came to me with a gold ring. "Marry me," he said. "My father's agreed to accept you into the pack. We'll have the ceremony on the next full moon." I said yes through tears of joy, thinking my nightmare was finally over. I didn't know it was just beginning. I didn't know that 3 months later, I'd be on my knees with a blade at my throat, learning that the only reason he'd wanted me was to kill me. I didn't know that his father's curse required the blood of a willing mate. Someone who'd given their heart freely. Someone like me. And I didn't know that the moment before my death, a stranger with ice-blue eyes would crash into my life and call me his mate, shattering everything I thought I understood about destiny, love, and the cruel workings of fate. Chapter 3. The Stranger's Claim. Riven Ashmore stood between me and Kale like a living wall, every muscle in his scarred body coiled tight and ready. I clutched the silver blade, my hands still shaking, unable to process what he'd just said. His mate? That was impossible. I could only have one mate, and the bond with Kale, even broken and bleeding as it was, should have prevented any other connection. Yet when I looked at Riven, something ancient and powerful stirred in my chest. My wolf wasn't just responding to him. She was singing. "You're insane," Kale snarled, blood still dripping from his temple. "She's mine. We were bonded 3 years ago under the crescent moon." The pack witnessed it. Riven's laugh was cold and sharp as breaking ice. A crescent bond isn't a true mate bond, and you know it. It's a political arrangement, a promise. But it's not fated. He glanced back at me, those ice-blue eyes burning with something I couldn't name. "She's not yours, Thornwyck. She never was." The words hit me like a physical blow. A crescent bond. All this time, I'd thought Kale and I were true mates, that the moon herself had chosen us for each other. But a crescent bond was different. It was a pack thing, a way for alphas to claim chosen partners without waiting for fate to decide. It could be broken. It could be fake. "No," I whispered, pushing myself to my feet even though my legs felt like water. "No," he told me. "He said we were fated." He lied. Riven said simply, his voice gentler now. "Whatever he told you, whatever you felt, it was manufactured. Enhanced through ritual and manipulation. But your wolf knows the truth. Can't you feel it?" I could. God help me, I could. The pull toward Riven was like gravity, like the tide responding to the moon. It was nothing like what I'd felt with Kale, that had been warm and comfortable, like slipping into a familiar dream. This was raw and terrifying and real. Kale's face twisted with rage. "Even if that's true, it changes nothing. She has to die tonight. The curse demands a mate's blood, and the crescent bond is enough. The ritual's already started. You can see the moon." He pointed upward, and I followed his gesture with growing horror. The full moon overhead was turning red. Blood moon. The rarest and most powerful kind. Whatever curse plagued the Thornwyck bloodline, tonight was the only chance to break it. And I was the key. "So break it another way," Riven growled. "Sacrifice something else. Your pride, maybe. Your power." "There is no other way," Kale roared, and for the first time, I heard real desperation in his voice. "My father's dying. The curse is killing every alpha in my line before they reach 40. He has 3 days left. 3 days. If I don't complete this ritual tonight, I'll watch him waste away, and then it'll be my turn. I'll have maybe 20 years before the same thing happens to me." Understanding dawned, cold and bitter. This wasn't just about power or cruelty. Kale was terrified. He was watching his father, a man who'd been a mighty alpha, feared and respected, reduced to a skeletal shadow, coughing blood and unable to shift. And he knew the same fate waited for him. It didn't excuse what he'd tried to do, but it explained it. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "I'm sorry about your father, about the curse, but I won't die for you. Find another way." Kale's expression hardened. "There is no other way, and I'm not asking for permission." He shifted in one fluid motion, his body exploding into his wolf form, a massive golden beast with amber eyes full of rage and fear. He lunged for me. Riven moved faster. The two wolves collided in midair with a sound like thunder, all teeth and claws and savage fury. They crashed into the ground, tearing up earth and roots, each trying to get to the other's throat. I stood frozen, the silver blade heavy in my hand, watching them fight. Part of me wanted to run, to disappear into the forest and never look back. But another part, the part that had loved Kale for 3 years, couldn't move. And a new part, one I'd just discovered, refused to leave Riven. The gray wolf, Riven, fought with brutal efficiency, using his size and weight to pin Kale down. But Kale was faster, slipping free and darting in to leave deep gashes across Riven's shoulders. Blood, black in the red moonlight, stained the ground. "Stop!" I screamed. "Both of you, stop." Neither of them listened. Kale got his jaws around Riven's front leg and bit down hard. I heard bone crack. Riven roared and twisted, slamming Kale into a tree with enough force to splinter the trunk. Then I saw her. Isolde had circled back, moving through the shadows in her white wolf form, completely silent. She wasn't watching the fight. She was watching me, and she was positioning herself to strike. Chapter 4. Blood and Promises. Isolde launched herself at me with her fangs bared, and I moved on pure instinct. The silver blade came up, and I channeled every ounce of my forest magic into it, making it glow with green-gold light. When she hit me, the impact drove us both to the ground, but the blade buried itself in her shoulder, sinking deep. She screamed a horrible, almost human sound and thrashed away from me, shifting mid-movement back to her human form. "You little bitch," she gasped, clutching the wound as silver poisoning spread black veins across her pale skin. "You've ruined everything. Do you know what he promised me? What I was supposed to get?" I climbed to my feet, keeping the bloody blade raised between us. My hands were steadier now. Funny how nearly dying twice in one night could cure the shakes. "I don't care what he promised you," I said. "You tried to help him murder me. Whatever deal you made, I hope it was worth your soul." Isolde laughed, a bitter sound. "My pack is starving. The Northern Territories are dying, prey's gone, water's poisoned, and my father's too proud to ask for help. Kale promised us access to Thornwyck hunting grounds, a formal alliance, and a place for our wolves if I helped him break the curse. All I had to do was play the other woman and keep you distracted long enough for the ceremony." The pieces clicked into place. The way Isolde had appeared at pack gatherings 6 months ago, always touching Kale's arm, laughing at his jokes. I'd been jealous, but Kale had sworn she meant nothing. "Just politics," he'd said. "I have to be nice to her for the alliance." It had all been theater, a way to make me feel insecure, to make me cling tighter to him, to make the eventual betrayal hurt worse. Because a mate's blood had more power when it was freely given in love. Behind me, the wolves were still fighting. I could hear them crashing through the underbrush, snarling and snapping. "Riven," I called. "I need you." The gray wolf immediately broke away from Kale, leaving him panting and bleeding, and loped to my side. He shifted as he reached me, becoming the scarred man again, naked and covered in wounds, but still standing strong. "What do you need?" he asked, his ice-blue eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Can you get me out of here?" I asked. "Away from all of this?" He nodded once. "I can take you anywhere you want to go." "But Elowen." He glanced at the red moon, now fully blood-dark overhead. "Whatever ritual he started, it's not finished. As long as you're bonded to him, even with a crescent bond, he can track you. He can find you." "Then we break the bond," I said. Isolde, still clutching her poisoned shoulder, let out a harsh laugh. "You can't break a crescent bond without alpha approval from both packs. And good luck getting Kale to release you now, when you're the only thing standing between him and his father's death." I looked at Riven. "Is she right?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Technically, yes. But there's another way. A true mate bond overrides everything else. If we complete the bond, if I mark you and you accept it, the crescent bond will shatter automatically." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You're asking me to choose you. Right now. After knowing you for..." I glanced at the sky. "Maybe 10 minutes." Riven's expression was grave. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to let me save your life. The rest we can figure out later." It was insane. Completely insane. I knew nothing about this man except that he'd appeared out of nowhere to rescue me, and that my wolf wanted him with an intensity that bordered on painful. But what other choice did I have? Kale would hunt me down. The ritual demanded my death, and he'd made it clear he was willing to kill me to save his father. If I do this, I said slowly, what happens to Cale? To his father? Riven's jaw tightened. The curse continues. His father dies. Eventually, the same thing happens to him. I turned to look at Cale, who'd shifted back to human form and was leaning against a tree, breathing hard. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, and his golden eyes were fixed on me with a mixture of desperation and something that might have been regret. I loved you, I told him. Every stupid moment of the last 3 years, I loved you with everything I had. And you were going to cut my throat. I didn't want to, Cale said, his voice breaking. Elowen, you have to understand, I tried everything else. Every ritual, every sacrifice, every healer and witch and shaman. Nothing worked. The curse only breaks one way, with a willing mate's blood under a blood moon. And those only come once every 13 years. He took a step toward me, and Riven growled low in his throat. Cale stopped. If you walk away now, you're killing me. Killing my father. Killing every future alpha in the Thornwyck line. Is that what you want? I thought about his father, Alpha Marcus, who'd smiled at me during the bonding ceremony 3 years ago, who'd welcomed me into the pack despite my mixed blood. He'd seemed kind, but he'd also known about the curse. He'd known that his son would eventually need to kill me, and he'd let it happen anyway. Yes, I said clearly. I'd rather every Thornwyck alpha die than give you what you want. Find another way to break your curse. Or don't. Either way, I'm done being your sacrifice. Chapter 5. The Marking. Riven's hand was warm when I took it, his fingers calloused and rough against my palm. Are you sure? He asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Around us, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Cale stood frozen by the tree, his face a mask of disbelief and growing rage. Isolde had slumped against a boulder, still bleeding from the silver wound, too weak to interfere. The blood moon cast everything in shades of crimson and shadow. No, I admitted. But I'm choosing this anyway. Something flickered in Riven's eyes. Respect, maybe, or understanding. He lifted my hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles, and even that simple touch sent electricity racing up my arm. My wolf surged forward, desperate, demanding. She wanted this. Wanted him. In a way she'd never truly wanted Cale. A true mate bond requires 3 things, Riven said, still holding my hand. A mark, an acceptance, and a binding of souls. The mark is physical. I bite you here. He touched the junction of my neck and shoulder gently. It'll hurt, but only for a moment. The acceptance is your choice. You have to open yourself to the bond. Let your wolf acknowledge mine as her mate. And the binding happens on its own, if the fates allow it. And if the fates don't allow it? I asked. If we're wrong about this? Riven's smile was sad. Then you'll have a scar on your shoulder, and we'll figure out another way to keep you safe. But I'm not wrong, Elowen. I felt you the moment I crossed into this territory. Your wolf was screaming, and mine answered. That's not something you can fake or force. That's fate. I looked back at Cale one last time. He was shaking his head slowly, his expression devastated. Don't do this, he said. Please. Elowen, I know I hurt you, but we had 3 years together. 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything. It meant I'd wasted 3 years of my life loving someone who'd seen me as a tool, a sacrifice, a means to an end. It meant I'd ignored my mother's dying warning because I was desperate to belong somewhere, to be wanted by someone. It meant I'd been a fool. It means I learned a lesson, I told him. Never trust someone who tells you exactly what you want to hear. I turned back to Riven, tilting my head to expose my neck. Do it. He didn't hesitate. His hand cupped the back of my head, gentle despite his size and strength, and he lowered his mouth to my shoulder. I felt his breath first, warm against my skin. Then his lips. Then his teeth. The pain was sharp and immediate, like being stabbed with hot iron. I gasped and my fingers dug into his arms, but I didn't pull away. My wolf was howling inside me, but not in pain, in triumph, in recognition. Riven's teeth sank deeper, and I felt something break inside my chest. The crescent bond with Kale shattered like glass, and the absence of it was shocking. I hadn't realized how much of my emotional energy had been tied up in maintaining that connection until it was gone. For a moment, I felt empty, lost. Then Riven's soul touched mine, and everything changed. It was like standing in sunlight after years in shadow, like taking a breath after nearly drowning. His essence flooded into me, wild and ancient and scarred by 1,000 battles, but underneath all that darkness was something fierce and protective and unbreakably loyal. He pulled back, blood on his lips, my blood, and his eyes were glowing pure silver now. "Accept it," he said roughly. "Open yourself to me."
I didn't know how.
I'd never done this before. The crescent bond with Kale had been created through a pack ritual, all ceremony and formal words. This was raw and primal and terrifying. But my wolf knew what to do. She pushed forward, taking partial control, and I felt my own eyes shift to amber. Felt my canines lengthen. Felt something deep in my core unlock and reach out toward Riven's soul like a hand seeking another in the dark. When we connected, the world exploded into color and sensation. I could feel his heartbeat like it was my own. Could sense his emotions, the fierce protectiveness, the relief that he'd found me, the bone-deep certainty that I belonged to him and he to me. And underneath it all, a terrible, aching loneliness that had defined his entire existence until this moment. "I accept," I whispered. The words had power. The bite mark on my shoulder blazed with heat, and when I looked down, I could see it glowing through my skin, silver and gold light in the shape of a wolf's fangs. Chapter 6: The Hunt Begins. Kale's hull shattered the night, raw and anguished, and every wolf in the Thornwyck territory would hear it. It was a call to arms, a summons, a declaration of war. I stumbled against Riven as the true mate bond settled into place. Overwhelmed by the flood of sensation, I could feel his presence like a second heartbeat in my chest, could sense his thoughts brushing against mine like whispered secrets. "We need to move," Riven said urgently, already shifting back to his wolf form.
"Now."
"That howl will bring the entire pack, and they'll be here in minutes." I looked down at myself, still in the white dress I'd worn for my wedding ceremony, now torn and stained with blood and dirt. My feet were bare. I had no supplies, no plan, no idea where to go. Everything I owned was in Kale's house, in the heart of Thornwyck territory. I had nothing but the silver blade still clutched in my hand. "Wait," Isolde said weakly from her position against the boulder. Her face was gray with silver poisoning, the black veins spreading from her shoulder across her chest now. "Take me with you." I stared at her. "You just tried to help him kill me."
"And I failed," she said.
"Which means Kale won't honor his promises to my pack. Worse, he'll see me as a liability, someone who knows too much about tonight. He'll kill me to keep me quiet." She tried to push herself up and failed, slumping back with a gasp of pain.
"Please."
"I'm already dead if you leave me here. The silver's in my bloodstream. I need a healer, and I need to be far away from this territory when I recover." Riven snarled, his massive gray wolf body tense with impatience. Through our new bond, I felt his thoughts clearly. "Leave her. She doesn't deserve our help. We need to run." But I couldn't. Maybe it was my mother's human compassion, or maybe it was my own stupid inability to leave anyone to die, even someone who'd betrayed me. "Can you shift?" I asked Isolde. She shook her head. "Not with silver poisoning. I'm stuck like this." I looked at Riven. "Can you carry her?" His response through the bond was immediate and furious. "You can't be serious. She tried to kill you." "And she failed," I said. "And now she's dying because of choices Kale forced her into. Her pack is starving Riven." She was desperate. Through our bond, I felt him wrestling with the decision. Finally, reluctantly, he shifted back to human form. "You're too soft," he muttered, but he moved to Isolde and picked her up with surprising gentleness, cradling her against his chest. "We won't get far with me carrying her, and you on foot." "Then I'll shift," I said. I'd only fully shifted a handful of times. My mixed blood made it harder, more painful than it was for pure wolves. But I didn't have a choice. I closed my eyes and reached for my wolf. She came easier than ever before, surging forward with eager strength. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe it was the new mate bond stabilizing something inside me, but the shift was smooth.
Quick.
Almost painless. When I opened my eyes again, I was on 4 paws instead of 2, my senses exploding with new information. I could smell everything. Kale's blood, Isolde's fear, Riven's wild scent that made my wolf want to press against him and never leave. And underneath it all, I could smell the Thornwyck pack approaching. At least 20 wolves, moving fast through the forest. They'd be here in 2 minutes, maybe less. Riven set Isolde on my back. She was light, barely more than bones and desperation, and she clung to my fur with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. Riven shifted again, becoming the enormous gray wolf, and took off at a dead run. I followed, my paws eating up ground, my lungs burning with effort. Behind us, I heard the Thornwyck wolves burst into the clearing. Heard Kale's voice, human again, shouting orders. "Find them. Track them. I want Elowen alive, do you understand? Alive." We ran through the night, crashing through underbrush, leaping over fallen logs, splashing through ice-cold streams. Riven set a brutal pace, and I pushed myself to keep up, feeling Isolde's weight shift with each stride. Through the bond, I felt Riven's concern for me, his awareness of my exhaustion. But he didn't slow down. He couldn't. The Thornwyck wolves were faster than I'd expected. I could hear them gaining, their howls getting closer. My lungs were screaming, my legs shaking with fatigue. I couldn't keep this pace much longer. Then the forest opened up ahead, and I saw lights.
A town.
Riven veered away from it, heading instead for the river that cut through the valley, the same river where I'd first met Kale all those years ago. But this wasn't the gentle, shallow section I knew. This was upstream, where the water ran deep and fast, swollen with snow melt from the mountains. Riven dove in without hesitation. I followed, and the cold water hit me like a fist, stealing my breath. Isolde gasped, and her fingers tightened in my fur, but she held on. The current grabbed us immediately, dragging us downstream, away from our pursuers. I struggled to keep my head above water, to keep swimming, but it was so cold, and I was so tired. Chapter 7. Refuge in Ruins. The river spat us out 3 miles downstream, battered and half-drowned. I dragged myself onto the muddy bank and collapsed, my wolf form melting away as my strength gave out. Beside me, Riven shifted back to human, coughing up water. Isolde had passed out entirely, her silver poisoning worse now, her breathing shallow. "Cave," Riven rasped, pointing to a dark opening in the hillside about 50 yards away. "Old wolf shelter. Abandoned. We'll be safe there until dawn." I didn't have energy to argue. Could barely manage to crawl. Riven lifted both me and Isolde, impossibly strong, even exhausted, and carried us into the cave. Inside, it was dry and surprisingly warm, with the remnants of old fire pits and sleeping furs that had somehow survived years of abandonment. He laid us down gently, then went back out into the rain that had started to fall. He returned minutes later with an armful of dry wood he'd found stored in a hollow tree, and within minutes had a fire going. The warmth was heaven. I curled up next to it, shivering violently, and watched Riven work. He moved with efficient precision, checking Isolde's wound, building up the fire, arranging the old furs into makeshift bedding. "You've done this before," I said through chattering teeth. "Been on the run, I mean." He glanced at me, firelight casting shadows across his scarred face. "I've been running my whole life. Since I was 14. "Why?" The question came out before I could stop it. Riven was quiet for a long moment, focused on wrapping Isolde's shoulder with strips torn from his own shirt, though where he'd found a shirt, I had no idea. Then he spoke, his voice low and rough. "I killed my father." The words hung in the air between us. I should have been scared. Should have questioned what kind of monster I'd just bonded myself to. But through our connection, I could feel his emotions, the old grief, the guilt, the bone-deep certainty that he'd had no other choice. "Tell me," I said. He finished bandaging Isolde, then came to sit beside me, close enough that I could feel his body heat. My father was alpha of the Ashmore pack. Powerful, respected, feared. Also completely insane. He believed in the old ways, survival of the strongest, no mercy for weakness, absolute dominance over everything and everyone. Riven's hands clenched into fists. When I was 12, my mother got sick. Something with her lungs. She needed medicine, rest, care. But my father saw sickness as weakness. He told her to shift and let her wolf heal her, and when she couldn't, when the sickness was too deep, he cast her out of the pack. Exiled her to die alone. I made a soft sound of horror. Riven continued, his voice flat now, emotionless. I tried to help her. Snuck food and water to where she was staying in the forest. My father found out. He said I was weak, that I dishonored the pack by helping in exile. He beat me half to death and left me chained in the pack square for 3 days as an example to others. My mother died while I was chained there. I could smell her death on the wind. His jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. When he finally released me, I waited.
Trained.
Got stronger. And on my 14th birthday, when he tried to beat me again for some imagined slight, I fought back. I didn't mean to kill him. Just wanted him to stop, to leave me alone. But my wolf was stronger than I knew, and angrier than I'd realized. By the time I came back to myself, he was dead, and the entire pack was staring at me. What did they do?
I asked.
Tried to kill me, Riven said simply. An alpha's murderer can't be allowed to live, even if that alpha was a monster.
So I ran.
Spent the next 12 years alone, moving from territory to territory, never staying long enough to put down roots or make connections. Until tonight. Until I felt you calling. He turned to look at me, his ice blue eyes intense. I was 50 miles north of here, planning to cross into Canada. Then your wolf started screaming. I felt your terror, like it was my own. I ran faster than I've ever run, crossed the Thornwyck border, and found you. My mate. The one person in the world who's supposed to be mine. The bond between us pulsed with emotion, his relief at finding me, his fear of losing me, his determination to keep me safe. I reached out and took his hand. I'm sorry about your mother, and your father, and everything that happened to you. Don't be sorry, Riven said. It made me who I am. And who I am is someone who won't let anyone hurt you. Ever. It was a promise and a threat and a vow all at once. I squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength, the steadiness. Whatever else Riven Ashmore was, he was honest. No pretty lies, no manipulation, no hidden agendas. Just brutal, raw truth. We need to get the silver out of her, I said, looking at Isolde's unconscious form. If it spreads to her heart, she'll die. Can you do it? Riven asked. With your healing magic? I nodded slowly. Maybe. But it'll drain me completely. I'll be useless for at least a day afterward. Then we wait until we're somewhere safer, Riven said firmly. She betrayed you. She doesn't get priority over your safety. Through the bond, I felt his protectiveness like a physical thing, warm and fierce. If she dies, that's on my conscience, I said. And I've already got enough ghosts. Riven studied me for a long moment, then sighed. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably, I admitted. He smiled. Actually smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face into something almost beautiful. Good. I was getting bored with the easy life of constant running and fighting for survival. Despite everything, I laughed. It felt wrong, inappropriate, like laughing at a funeral. But it also felt necessary, like proof that I was still alive, still capable of joy even in the darkest moments. I moved closer to Isolde, placing my hands on her poisoned shoulder. The silver had spread through her bloodstream like black ink in water, corrupting everything it touched. This would be harder than healing Kale's wound all those years ago. This would require me to pull the poison out bit by bit, filtering it through my own body and grounding it into the earth. I closed my eyes and reached for the forest's energy. Even here, in this abandoned cave, I could feel it, The slow pulse of growing things, the patient strength of stone and soil, the eternal cycle of life and death and rebirth. I channeled it into myself, then into Isolde, using my magic like a net to catch the silver particles and drag them out. The poison burned as it passed through me. I gritted my teeth and kept going, pulling it out of her blood, her organs, her bone marrow. Black sweat beaded on my forehead. My hands shook.
The cave started to spin around me.
Elowen, stop, Riven said urgently. You're killing yourself. Almost done, I gasped. Just a little more. Just a bit further. The last of the silver came out in a rush, and I directed it down into the earth beneath us, letting the soil absorb and neutralize it. Then the world went dark, and I collapsed into Riven's waiting arms. Chapter 8. Hunted. I woke to the sound of howling. Not close, but not far enough away either. Maybe a mile, maybe less. Kale's pack, still hunting. I sat up quickly, my head spinning with the movement. The fire had burned down to embers, and pale dawn light was filtering through the cave entrance. Isolde was awake, sitting up against the cave wall. Her face had color again, and the black veins of silver poisoning were gone. She looked at me with an unreadable expression. You saved me. After everything, you actually saved me. Don't make a big deal out of it, I muttered, rubbing my aching temples. Through the bond, I could feel Riven nearby, outside, probably keeping watch. Where's Riven? Hunting, Isolde said. He left about an hour ago. Said we needed food if we were going to keep running.
She paused.
He also said that if I tried anything while he was gone, you had his permission to kill me.
So, there's that.
I almost smiled. Sounded like Riven. The howls came again, closer now. My stomach twisted with fear. They're tracking us, Isolde said. Your bond with Riven, it leaves a signature. Any wolf with decent tracking skills will be able to follow it. Can they break it? I asked. The bond. Isolde shook her head. A true mate bond can't be broken. Not by magic, not by force, not by anything except death. That's why they're so rare and so valued. Once it's formed, you're connected forever. Forever. The word should have been romantic. Instead, it felt like a prison sentence. I barely knew Riven. Yes, there was attraction. Fierce and undeniable. Yes, my wolf wanted him with an intensity that bordered on obsession. But I'd thought I loved Kale, and look how that turned out. How could I trust my own judgment anymore? Riven appeared at the cave entrance, his arms full of rabbits. He was dressed now, probably had stashed clothes somewhere nearby before the fight, in worn jeans and a dark shirt that did nothing to hide the broadness of his shoulders. They're 2 miles out, he said without preamble, moving in a search pattern. We have maybe 30 minutes before they reach this area. He tossed the rabbits to Isolde. Eat fast. We're leaving in 10 minutes. Isolde caught them and immediately started preparing them with efficient, practiced movements. I noticed her hands were steady now, her movements strong. The healing had worked. Where are we going? I asked Riven. He crouched beside me, his ice-blue eyes serious. There's a sanctuary. Neutral territory, protected by ancient law. No pack can enter it without permission from the council that runs it. It's 3 days hard travel from here, through 2 different pack territories. Will they let us in? I asked. The sanctuary? Riven's expression was grim. If we can reach it, yes. The council doesn't care about pack politics or blood feuds. They only care about preserving the old ways and protecting those who need shelter. But getting there is the problem. We'll have to cross through Blackfen territory, Lucien Blackfen's pack. He's old, powerful, and he doesn't like strangers. Will he help Kale hunt us? Isolde asked, pausing in her food preparation. Depends on what Kale offers him, Riven said. Blackfen pack is isolated, self-sufficient. They don't need allies or resources. But they might be interested in the political implications of harboring a rogue wolf and a runaway mate. I'm not a runaway mate, I said sharply. I'm a survivor of attempted murder. Riven's hand found mine, squeezed gently. I know. But that's not how Kale will tell the story. We ate quickly. The rabbit was barely cooked, but it was hot and filling. Isolde packed the extra meat in strips torn from her ruined dress, and we left the cave just as the sun fully cleared the horizon. The morning was cold and bright, and every sound seemed too loud. Every snapping twig, every bird call. My nerves were stretched thin as wire. We moved through the forest in single file, Riven in front, me in the middle, Isolde bringing up the rear. Riven set a quick pace, not running but not walking either, that ground-eating lope that wolves could maintain for hours. My body ached from yesterday's exhaustion and last night's healing, but I pushed through it. Behind us, the howls continued. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but always there. Always hunting. "They're using scent hounds," Isolde said after we'd been moving for 2 hours. "I can hear them. Kale must have brought in trackers from another pack." "How long until they catch up?" I asked. "At this pace?" "By nightfall," she said. "Maybe sooner if we have to slow down." Riven stopped suddenly, his body going tense. Through the bond, I felt his alarm. "What?" I asked. "We're not alone," he said quietly. "There's someone ahead. Multiple someones. Wolves, but not Thornwyck." He sniffed the air, his expression darkening. "Blackfen. We've already crossed into their territory." Isolde cursed under her breath. I looked around, seeing nothing but trees and shadows. Then they appeared, materializing from the forest like ghosts. 6 wolves, all in human form, all armed with silver-tipped weapons. And at their center stood a man who could only be Lucien Blackfen. He was tall and lean, with black hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes like dark honey. He wore expensive clothes that looked wildly out of place in the forest, and he moved with a kind of fluid grace that spoke of extreme age and power. "Well," Lucien said, his voice smooth as silk. "What do we have here? A rogue, a betrayed mate, and a northern wolf with silver poisoning so recent I can still smell it on her blood. How very interesting." His smile was beautiful and terrifying. "Welcome to Blackfen territory. I'm afraid I'm going to need you to explain yourselves before I decide whether to help you or hand you over to the very angry wolves hunting you." Riven stepped in front of me protectively, and I felt his wolf rising, ready to fight. But we were outnumbered and exhausted, and Lucien's wolves looked fresh, armed, and very, very dangerous. We'd run straight from one trap into another. And this time, I had no idea how we'd escape. Chapter 9. The Price of Freedom. Lucien Blackfen circled us like a predator sizing up prey, his dark honey eyes taking in every detail. His wolves kept their weapons trained on us, not aggressive but not friendly either, just ready. "I'm going to tell you a story," Lucien said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet forest. 3 years ago, Cale Thornwyck came to me with a proposition. He wanted to marry a half-blood wolf, you, I assume, and needed my support in case the other packs objected. I told him he was a fool. That mixing bloodlines only weakens the pack. He assured me it was temporary, that you were a means to an end. He stopped in front of me, studying my face. He told me about the curse, about how he planned to use you to break it. I told him that kind of dark magic always has consequences, that blood debts don't simply disappear. He didn't listen. My stomach dropped. Lucien had known. He'd known Cale was planning to kill me, and he'd done nothing. "So you see," Lucien continued, "I'm not particularly inclined to help you. You're a complication from a plan that should have ended last night. The logical thing would be to return you to Cale, collect whatever favor he owes me, and forget this ever happened." Riven snarled, his body coiling to attack. "Touch her, and I'll rip your throat out." Lucien laughed, genuinely amused. "I like you, rogue. You've got spirit. But you're also wounded, exhausted, and outnumbered 6-1. So, let's skip the posturing and talk honestly." He waved his hand, and his wolves lowered their weapons slightly. "I said returning you was the logical choice. I didn't say it was what I'd do." Hope flickered in my chest. "What do you want?" I asked. Lucien said, smiling. "Now we're negotiating. I like that. Direct, honest, practical. You're smarter than your former mate gave you credit for." He gestured to a fallen log, inviting us to sit. We didn't move. He shrugged and sat anyway, completely relaxed despite being surrounded by potential enemies. What I want is information. The Thornwyck curse isn't natural, it's a punishment. Someone or something created it generations ago, and the knowledge of its origin has been lost. But you little half-blood, you touched the ritual last night. You were at its center when it failed. You might have information locked in your blood, in your magic, that could help me understand who has the power to curse an entire bloodline. Why do you care? Isolde asked suspiciously. Lucien's expression darkened. Because 3 months ago, one of my wolves, a young female, barely 18, died screaming in her sleep. No wounds, no poison, no illness. Just terror and agony and death. 2 weeks later, it happened again. And again. 5 deaths total. All young wolves, all dying the same way. The horror of it settled over us. You think it's the same thing, I said slowly. Someone cursing your pack the way Kale's pack was cursed. I think there's something ancient and malicious moving through the territories, Lucien said. And I think the Thornwyck curse was just the beginning. So yes, I'm interested in helping you. Because helping you might help me save my pack. It made a sick kind of sense. Lucien wasn't being altruistic, he was being practical. What do you need from me? I asked. Your blood, Lucien said bluntly. Just a few drops, mixed with specific herbs and read by my pack seer. It won't hurt you, and it might give us answers. Riven growled again.
No.
Absolutely not. Through the bond, I felt his fear, not for himself, but for me. He didn't trust Lucien, didn't trust this convenient offer of help. But I thought about those 5 young wolves, dying in terror. Thought about Kale's father wasting away, and all the future Thornwyck alphas doomed to the same fate. If there was a chance to understand what was happening, to maybe stop it, didn't I have to try? I'll do it, I said. Elowen, Riven started. I'll do it, I repeated firmly, meeting his eyes. But in exchange, you get us safely to the sanctuary. All 3 of us. And you make sure Kale's pack can't follow. Lucien stood, brushing dirt from his expensive pants.
Done.
My wolves will escort you to the border. After that, you're on your own. The sanctuary's guardians don't appreciate outside interference. But I'll delay any pursuit for 3 days. That should give you enough time to reach safety. He pulled a small silver knife from his belt and held it out to me. Whenever you're ready. I took the knife, feeling its weight, its cold certainty. Pressed the blade to my palm and drew a quick line across my skin. Blood welled up, darker than human blood, carrying the mixed heritage that had defined my entire life. Lucien produced a small glass vial and held it under my hand, collecting the drops. When it was full, he stoppered it carefully and tucked it into his jacket. Thank you, he said, and his voice was sincere. Whatever we learn from this, I'll make sure word reaches you at the sanctuary. He turned to his wolves. Escort them to the eastern border. Full provisions, medical supplies, and weapons. They're under Blackfen protection until they cross into neutral territory. The wolves moved immediately, clearly used to following orders. One of them, a woman with kind eyes and healing magic I could sense, came forward with bandages for my hand. As she wrapped it, Lucien spoke one last time. A word of advice, he said, looking at me. The sanctuary will keep you safe from physical pursuit, but it can't protect you from the consequences of that bond you've formed. True mate bonds are rare, but they're not always blessings. Sometimes they're curses in disguise. Sometimes the person you're destined for is the person who'll destroy you. Be careful, little half-blood. Trust is a luxury people like us can't afford. With that ominous warning, he melted back into the forest, leaving us with his wolves and more questions than answers. We traveled for 2 more days under Blackfen escort, moving quickly through territory that would have been impossible to cross alone. The Blackfen wolves were professional, courteous, and completely silent. They didn't answer questions or engage in conversation. They simply guided us, fed us, and kept watch while we slept. On the morning of the 3rd day, we reached the border. The sanctuary lay ahead, marked by ancient standing stones covered in moss and carved with symbols I didn't recognize. This is as far as we go, the healer said, the first words any of them had spoken since we left Lucian. The sanctuary's protection begins at the stones. Once you cross, we can't follow. What about Kale? I asked. Will he be able to cross? She shook her head. No pack wolf can enter the sanctuary without invitation from the council. You're safe there. Whether that's a blessing or a prison depends on what you do next. She handed me a pack, food, water, a map, basic supplies. Good luck. Then the black fen wolves turned and disappeared back into the forest, leaving the three of us standing at the threshold. Riven took my hand, his grip warm and strong. Isolde stood beside us, looking nervous but determined. Together, we crossed between the standing stones into sanctuary territory, into whatever future waited for us on the other side. Behind us, I heard a howl, distant but unmistakable. Kale's voice, full of rage and loss. He'd reached the border, but he couldn't follow. For the first time in 3 days, I was safe. Chapter 10, New Moon Rising. The sanctuary was nothing like I'd expected. I'd imagined a fortress, maybe, or a hidden compound. Instead, it was a village, small and peaceful, nestled in a valley between two mountains. Wooden houses with smoke curling from chimneys, gardens bursting with late-season vegetables, wolves in both human and animal form moving about their daily lives. It looked like home. The council met us at the village entrance. 3 ancient wolves, their human forms bent with age, but their eyes sharp and knowing. The eldest, a woman with silver hair down to her waist, stepped forward. "Elowen Thorn," she said, and I startled at hearing my name. "We've been expecting you."
How?
I asked. She smiled. "The forest speaks to those who listen. We've known about the Thornwyck curse for generations, and we've been watching to see if Kale would go through with his plan. When you survived and bonded with Riven Ashmore instead, well, that changed everything." She gestured for us to follow her into the village. As we walked, wolves stopped their work to stare, not hostile, just curious. I felt their eyes on my mating mark, on Riven's protective stance, on Isolde trailing behind us like a lost shadow. The councilwoman led us to a large house at the village center. Inside, it was warm and cozy, with a fire crackling in the hearth and the smell of fresh bread in the air. "Sit," she commanded, and we sat. "My name is Mireia Bloodwillow. I'm the eldest of the Sanctuary Council, and I need to explain some things before you can stay here." She settled into a chair across from us, her movements graceful despite her age. The sanctuary exists to protect wolves who don't fit into pack structures. Rogues, exiles, those fleeing persecution or violence. But protection comes with rules. No pack politics within these walls. No vendettas. No violence except in self-defense.
Can you agree to that?
"Yes," I said immediately. Riven nodded. Isolde hesitated, then agreed as well. "Good," Mireia said. "Now for the harder truth. Elowen, your bond with Riven is stable and true, but it's also incomplete." "What does that mean?" Riven asked sharply. Mireia looked at him with something like pity. "A true mate bond has 3 stages. The marking, which you've completed. The binding, which is the soul connection you're feeling now. And the anchoring, a final ritual that ties you together permanently, making you one in the eyes of the moon and magic. Until you complete the anchoring, the bond can still be influenced. Not broken, but twisted, corrupted." My blood ran cold. Kale could still hurt us. "Not Kale," Mireia said. "But the thing that created his family's curse could. True mate bonds are powerful, and power attracts attention. Dark things. Hungry things." She stood and moved to a shelf, pulling down an ancient book bound in leather. The Thornwyck curse was created by a witch named Morgana Thornspell 300 years ago. She was Alpha Marcus's ancestors' rejected mate, cast aside for a woman with better bloodlines. In her rage and pain, she cursed the entire Alpha line to die young, generation after generation, watching their strength waste away. The only way to break it was through the ultimate betrayal, killing a mate who loved you willingly. "But Kale failed," I said. Yes, Maria agreed. Which means the curse adapted. It's still active, but now it's searching for a new anchor point. And your bond with Riven, strong, new, vulnerable, is exactly what it needs. Riven's hand tightened on mine. What do we do? You complete the anchoring, Mireia said. Fully and permanently. It requires time, trust, and a ritual under the new moon, which, fortunately, is tonight. Tonight. The word hung in the air. I looked at Riven, really looked at him. This man who'd saved my life, who'd killed his own father to protect his mother, who'd spent 12 years running alone until he felt me calling. This man who was rough and scarred and honest in a way that terrified me. Could I tie myself to him forever? Did I have a choice? Through the bond, I felt his emotions. His fear that I'd refuse. His certainty that I was his, that we belonged together. His willingness to wait as long as I needed, even if it meant keeping the bond vulnerable. Tell me about the ritual, I said. Mireia explained. The anchoring required us to speak vows under the new moon, not fancy words, just honest promises. To offer each other something precious, blood, hair, a treasured possession. And to accept the bond fully, without reservation, opening ourselves completely to each other. After that, Mireia said, nothing can break you. Not curses, not magic, not even death. Your souls will be twined together until the end of time. It was beautiful and terrifying. Forever with someone I'd known for 3 days. But when I looked at Riven, I didn't see a stranger. I saw someone who understood loss and pain, and the weight of terrible choices. Someone who'd fight for me, protect me, stand beside me against anything. Maybe love wasn't about time. Maybe it was about recognition, seeing someone and knowing, deep in your bones, that they were meant to be yours. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Riven's face transformed, relief and joy breaking through his usual stoic expression. Mireia smiled. Then we prepare. Isolde, you'll witness the ceremony. The sanctuary community will provide what you need.
She paused.
There's one more thing. After the anchoring, you'll need to decide what comes next. You can stay here, safe but hidden, or you can return to the world and face what's waiting. Kale, I said. And the curse. And the larger darkness that's spreading through the territories, Mireia confirmed. The deaths in Lucien's pack, the curse on the Thornwyck line, they're connected. Someone or something is targeting wolves systematically. If you're brave enough, if you're strong enough, you could help stop it. I thought about those 5 dead wolves in Blackfen territory, about Kale's father, dying slowly, about every future victim of whatever malicious force was at work. I want to help, I said. Riven squeezed my hand. Then we help. Together. That night, under the new moon's darkness, we stood in the center of the sanctuary village with the entire community gathered around us. Mireia led the ceremony, her voice strong and clear in the night air. Riven Ashmore, what do you offer? He held up a tooth, the wolf's fang. This was my mother's. The only thing I have left of her. I offer it freely. Elowen Thorn, what do you offer? I held up the silver blade, the one I'd used to cut Isolde, to defend myself, to draw blood for Lucien. This blade saved my life. I offer it freely. We placed them in Mireia's waiting hands. She bound them together with red thread, then handed the bundle back to us. Now speak your vows. Not what you think you should say, but what's true. I looked at Riven, at his ice-blue eyes reflecting moonlight. I vow to stand with you, to trust you when I'm scared, to be honest even when it hurts, to choose you every day, even when it's hard. You're mine and I'm yours, and nothing will change that. His voice was rough with emotion. I vow to protect you, to listen to you, to let you be strong and soft and everything in between. You're my first home in 12 years, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel lost again. The bond between us blazed like fire, like sunlight, like every bright and beautiful thing in the world. I felt Riven's soul merge completely with mine, felt the anchoring take hold and lock into place. We were one, forever. The curse that had been reaching for us, trying to find a foothold in our bond, shattered like glass against stone. I felt it break, felt the darkness retreat. We were safe, protected, whole. The sanctuary wolves howled their approval, and Riven pulled me into his arms and kissed me for the first time. It was gentle and fierce and perfect, and when we finally pulled apart, I was crying and laughing and more myself than I'd ever been. "What now?" I whispered. Riven smiled. "Now we rest. We heal. We get stronger. And then we hunt down whatever's killing wolves and we end it. Together. Together." The word felt like a promise and a future, and everything I'd been searching for. My name was Elowen Thorn, and I'd survived betrayal, discovered my true mate, and found a place to belong. This was just the beginning. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because I wasn't alone anymore. I had Riven. I had the sanctuary. I had hope. And that was more than enough. The moonbound hearts had found each other at last. And nothing, not curses, not fear, not the darkness itself, would tear us apart again. The end.